As the draft continued on for the Philadelphia Eagles for this current class, it seemed that rounds 2 and 3 followed suit to what was provided to us in round 1, to the team addressing both sides of the football. In this case, one pick was blessed by our Lord and Center, you get the pun, and the other was a DK Metcalf-esque type of risk equals reward. Hello everyone, Bird brothers and sisters alike. Lindy Endzone is in for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles. One video at a time. And as the NBA playoffs approach this evening, good luck to all the MFFLs out there as our Mavs take on the Phoenix Suns in round 2 of the playoffs after dispatching the Utah Jazz. My boy Luka finally got past the first round, and now it's time to build on his legacy. But nonetheless, let us get into the draft talk of day 2. Well, as it were to appear, the first selection at 51 between rounds 2 and 3 wasn't the, it wasn't the pick that a lot of Eagles fans were looking for in terms of like the sexy pick, the pizzazz, that exciting feeling that you get that, ooh, we're gonna get another standout player. And, well, he is still a standout player for the means of addressing the future, and that would be Cam Jurgens, the center selection out of Nebraska. The Nebraska product was a converted tight end into an offensive lineman, one that shows a lot of athleticism for the position, and he said it in his one-on-one and a little bit of his introductory press conference is that, he didn't have the capability of being able to run over and tackle safeties down the field in terms of protection when it comes to the run game. And, well, as playing tight end, when he wasn't getting targets, he didn't have the free range to do so, and that's part of the game that he loves to display. This selection came as, well, I don't want to call it a disappointment, but it was kind of kind of pick. And I was one of those people, as you can see in my initial reaction of the day 2 coverage. And yeah, I'm going to flame myself on that because why not? But nonetheless, the selection itself, when you put everything into context at the time and in the current time, makes plenty of sense. Cam Jurgens comes into a crowded offensive trenches room full of proven commodities from all experience levels. And by proven, I mean in terms of time on the field, much like last year's draft class where almost every pick, I should say, I think minus Marlon Tuipulotu while he was nursing a hamstring injury. But the majority of the picks made last year, all of those players got some actual playing time during the regular season. And much is to be said about the offensive line that Cam Jurgens is coming into, to which a current casualty of that we have seen today is the team releasing Nate Herbig, who at only 24 years old has started 17 games for the franchise and has contributed quite a lot. And understandably so with him, with him being an undrafted free agent, and you gotta make room. You got to make room for somebody, with it being the case of selecting Jurgens this early, investing a second-round pick in him, much like them signing LaRaven Clark and keeping Jack Driscoll. Andre Dillard is looking to bounce back from a first few years of disappointment. He's bulking up for his position and wanting to be a more dominant force and show that he does have some versatile properties qualities, I should say, that we really haven't seen on the field quite yet, but in Stout, I trust. And, this goes for the pick on Cam Jurgens. And earlier in the beginning of the video, talking about our Lord and Center, and who else would I be referring to other than Jason Kelce, who has come out to say that this was a player handpicked by him alongside the coaching staff and the scouting department in his research of a few years' time, that Jason thought that he was the best center prospect to replace him. Shocking to hear in the sense of their selection in the prior draft class in Landon Dickerson, but he seemed to have made a home on the left side of the line of scrimmage next to Jordan Mailata, and I don't think you want to separate the towers that early. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But nonetheless, again, the pick doesn't look all that attractive on the surface, but when you boil it down, it's going to be sad. It's going to be disappointing at the end when it's all said and done to know that this is kind of a swan song for the best center in football, and most likely we're not going to see another year out of Jason Kelce when he's gonna, it seems, hang up the cleats after the end of 2022. But this was a pick for the future, and kudos to Kelce in being involved, in the draft process and wanting to be involved in the draft process when it comes to offensive linemen, especially the center position, in which he doesn't want the Eagles to miss a beat when he sadly retires, and it's going to come sooner rather than later. So good job to the collaboration between Kelce and the front office in making this selection, and hoping that it pans out the way that they wanted to. Now, on to the other selection that that blew everybody out of the water, especially Eagles fans. And of course, when I say that, it's for multiple reasons. And one, they didn't think that this player was going to drop as far as he did, especially in the third round, that maybe he was going to fall to the early second or late second or what have you, especially based on his talent level and his skill set. And that is none other than Nakobe Dean, a part of that nasty Georgia Bulldogs defense. The Bulldogs standout had quite a monster junior year, contributing across the board, whether it be forced fumbles, interceptions, tackles for loss, and sacks, passes deflected. You're looking at 5 of those, 2 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, totaling to 50 yards between the two, 6 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss, 72 total tackles. He was a man among boys, really, much like the rest of the Bulldogs defense. And while a lot of people say that he was the leader, he was the man that made them tick on the field and getting them set up, and it looked like a and that's not even a word, but you get the point that I'm trying to get across, like a military-esque type of system where he's getting his troops in proper line and setting them up for stunts, disguises, whatever have you, to get to the quarterback. He was that voice out there to set the tone for the rest of the guys on the field. And with 5 Georgia standouts, he was the standout, but I'm duplicating my words here. But out of those 5, you can arguably say that he has a case to be one of the best players coming out, and the Eagles were one of the only teams that wanted to take that chance. If I remember correctly, I don't think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who was next in the pecking order to select after us. Something tells me it was Pittsburgh. So if we didn't pick up on him, on Nakobe Dean, you know darn well that a team like the Steelers or the Ravens or somebody else that prioritizes defense the way that they do, especially of course, in case of the Steelers, they're not picking up the 5th-year option on Devin Bush. So knowing that, you had to have imagined that a team like Pittsburgh or Baltimore or another defensive-centric football team would have been chomping at the bit to grab Nakobe Dean. But however, aside from his play on the field, the real issue surrounding him was the injury history, where some of the injuries that were towards the top of severity could include a possible labrum tear, shoulder problems, knee issues. We heard stuff about his foot, and it goes across a bit of a larger spectrum. Does that really paint a good picture in terms of durability? Of course, it really doesn't, especially for a undersized linebacker who's subjected to a lot of traffic on the field based on his assignments and work he needs to line up, who he's covering, run defense, pass defense, sideline to sideline, whatever the case may be. He's going to be subjected to a lot of contact. And so, it's going to be up to Jonathan Gannon and this coaching staff to put him in the best positions, in order for him to do his thing. Now, you have to imagine, on a positive note, that whenever Jordan Davis is on the football field, you have to imagine that they're going to try and pair him and Nakobe Dean together, because the two of them, oh man, who would have thought that we'd managed to grab two of those Georgia Bulldogs out of this draft class? Am I right? Who would have thunk it? But it's a match made in heaven type of scenario when you got a guy in Jordan Davis who's going to, that we hope is going to, at the NFL level, attract the amount of offensive linemen, with the threatening presence that he is. You have to imagine that, a guy like Nakobe Dean is going to chomp at the bit to, blast through the open gap and go and attack the quarterback or apply extra pressure. And that not only does that benefit a guy like Nakobe, but it's going to benefit guys like Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Davion Taylor, if he comes back healthy. And when you think about it, these kinds of moves that the Eagles are making throughout the draft and in the offseason, free agency, what have you, these kinds of moves, not only do they benefit the team as a whole in terms of personnel and skill set, their capabilities. When you talk about capabilities, that should also elevate the coaching staff in terms of defense to what Jonathan Gannon is able to do. And that was part of the problem when you assessed the defense from last year with the lack of proper personnel and trying to work around their limitations. There was too many instances where Jonathan Gannon was kind of strapped to what he was able to do. He understood what he had in the secondary, and he understood what he had, across the board. And there was too many moments where, It was a bend don't break style of defense, much to what we remember in how Jim Schwartz coordinated his, and they didn't want to get beat over the top, so everything was underneath. And then, of course, when it got too far into their own territory, that's when they started to get a little bit more aggressive and try to limit teams to field goals. But the object now is to supply a more relentless pressure that can get to the quarterback faster, and they're going to have to combat the fact that these teams are still going to want to try and get the football out in under 2.5 seconds. You know, like much like Justin Herbert was able to do with almost a 90% completion percentage, which was absolutely absurd. But these two moves alone just have tremendous value, just like what the Eagles were able to do in the first round, and it only just elevates what the team could very well be capable of. Now we can give initial grades all we want, but it comes down to if the coaching staff is capable of putting these guys in the right positions. And well, it starts that starts in OTAs, it starts in training camp, trying to figure out where these guys are physically and mentally, just culling the herd, if you will, especially with these undrafted free agents coming in. But let me know your thoughts on both selections, how what you felt initially about the picks between Cam Jurgens and Nakobe Dean. What type of success levels do you see for these two players? Do you trust Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis to get Nakobe Dean up to a proper speed and put him in the right position to succeed? And of course, well, in Stout we trust. So I really have next to no doubts about Cam Jurgens and his development because of who we have in that room, especially with all the veteran leadership around him. When you look at Lane Johnson and LaRaven Clark, Isaac Seumalo across the board, and the youngins can teach Cam, and the youngins can even teach Cam a thing or two, like Mailata and Dickerson, especially for a guy like Dickerson, in his transformation from year one as a rookie to year two, what he has learned, stuff like that. So the future is looking pretty bright so far in the selections that the Eagles have made. It started from day one, and it seeped into day two pretty darn nicely, but we have to see how it translates to the field. So let me know down in the comments on your thoughts initially about the two players selected, and if your mind has changed until then with a little bit more information that we have gathered. But nonetheless, they were great picks. And with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Didn't think I was going to compile a video this long, but sometimes when I get going into conversation, I don't know. Sometimes I like to talk, but I'll see you guys all later. Fly Eagles fly, bleed green. You already know the deal. Lindy is in for the touchdown next time. And with that, y'all have a good one.